Okay, so it's week 6. So what we're going to do today is, last week we looked at how the scaffolding tools worked. You had a chance in your assignment to use the scaffolding tools. And last week we started to customize them a little bit. We're going to spend more time today looking at how do we take what the scaffolded controllers and views give us and modify them to make an application that's closer to being production ready. Because there's obviously some big limitations to just working with the scaffolded files. So we're going to do that today. Next week is your midterm exam. Okay, again, you're going to need to have your environment set up properly for the midterm exam. There's 2 parts to the test. Okay. The first part, there will be some question and answer, probably just multiple choice. There won't be that many questions, maybe 20 or 30 questions. Just checking your general understanding of some of the concepts we've talked about in class. The second part of the test will be practical, where you will need to build a small MVC application. Or it may be that I give you a starter template and you have to make some changes to it. I haven't decided whether I'll have you build one from scratch or download one I put on the test that you'll have to modify. But again, I'm telling you now, you're going to have to run that on Azure because the class is too big for me to simply download everybody's project. So if you do not have GitHub and Azure working this week, you need to come to office hours. But please don't come unless you've gone through all the instructions. And you come with a specific question, this is where I'm stuck. We can check, I'll have to check what the test percentage of the test is worth. We can have a quick look. The test is open book. So you are allowed to use Blackboard, you're allowed to use a textbook if you have one, or any other notes or files or resources you have. So the midterm test would be worth 15%. We'll start it right at 2 o'clock next week. Are there questions about the test?
If we are a little late for class,
like
5 to 10 minutes or something.
You can come in, but I would prefer you on time because it's disruptive to everybody else. Also, if you're really late, as soon as you finish the test, you can leave. As soon as the first person finishes and leaves, and I had this happen last semester, nobody can come in and start the test after somebody's already left. I had a student arguing with me that he should be allowed to start a test an hour late. Already finished and left the room, which isn't fair. Because I don't know if they've had a chance to go and talk before that student came in. So I would try to be on time.
Yeah, we will try.
Aim to be early is probably a good thing. Other questions about your test?
Can we Google?
No, that's the one thing you can't do, okay? And searching online, if I see you searching for answers on Google, because the point of the test is for me to assess how much you've learned. If you just find the answer on Google, it doesn't tell me whether you actually understand the answer or not. But you can take your own study notes and you can bring them. You can look at any of the files or any of the work we've done in class. You can use all of that as a reference. You also can't watch the class videos during the test. So don't bring headphones. You can't have headphones during the test. Because if you have headphones, I can't be sure you're not watching the lessons, which is, again, not really the point of the test. Any other questions? I should be able to get everyone's assignments marked before the test, probably before the end of the week. Again, the sooner you get them to me, the sooner you get them back with a mark. So if you haven't handed in, please hand it in by tomorrow. Handing in something is better than handing in nothing. Okay, but you do have a 1-day late penalty right now if you haven't submitted. I've in fact already marked a few people who handed it on the weekend. A few of you probably, I think, have your marks already. Okay, so this is where we left off last week. We connected up our application to our database so that when we went into our store, oh, I guess my Azure site didn't update from my GitHub. Okay, well, I'll open up my project from last week. Might be a good idea. So let's open up the music store. And we'll have a look at where we left off, and then I'll show you what features we're going to add to what we did last week. So open your project, start it without debugging. So here was how we left it. Last week, we created this store manager. We changed a few of the titles here. So that's kind of how it looked. Here was our edit page. So we use scaffolding to generate all this stuff. We could create a new one. So today we're going to modify some of this a little bit. So we're going to add this store manager link. And we'll re-scaffold these views. But we're going to add some more useful features. So if we look at how we left this page last week, it's functional. It's probably not quite production ready. If we look at how this page is put together, what are some of the problems with it? It works, but it's not great. How would you make this better? Alex?
Add an option to choose the, for example, titles from the genre you want to add it.
Okay, so right now we have no ability, if this music store got really big, no ability to search for a particular album, say by the title. Yeah, that would be one feature we could add.
You can add a query like limit. We can put a limit like 10.
Okay, yeah, we could add pagination, so we have broken up into smaller lists that we scroll through. Yeah, what else could you do to make this better? If you owned the music store and I built this for you and said, here you go, your web page is done. You happy, totally happy with how this page works? Right? Okay, we could add a search feature. Yep.
The cart.
Okay, yeah, which we won't get to today, but we will do that. We could let people actually buy them. Anything else? If I scroll through the list, there should be one very obvious problem. Right. It looks like it's sort of in alphabetical order at the top, but if we scroll to the bottom, it's actually not in any alphabetical order at all. So what order are the albums actually being shown to us right now?
Other list within database.
Yeah, so just basically by the album ID, however they're in. So if we add a new album, it's automatically going to show up down here. So we should allow the user, so when we give them a grid of HTML data, what's the easiest way for users to be able to sort, typically?
Like on the artist, for example, or
Yeah, we want to make these clickable. So we want our page to sort like this instead, right? That we can choose any column heading and sort. So we should maybe add a search. We should add sorting. Fix the default sorting. So instead of sorting by the album ID, it's actually sorted maybe first by artist, maybe then by title. There's one other, it's not a major thing, there's one other. So here's our little search box. So this is my class from last Thursday. Also notice the price as we left it. Which one's better in terms of the price column? Here's ours, here's my other class. What's the difference?
That one is better because that says currency on it.
Right, we've added the proper formatting as well. So we want to make all these changes to this page. We're also going to make some changes on our create and edit views. So let's go in here. I click edit. I would say there's a number of things we want to change here. What things would you change on this page? I mean, it's functional, but it's not really polished. It's not finished. If we handed this to a customer, they're probably not going to be thrilled with it.
Instead of genre ID and artist ID, we actually should put genre and artist.
Okay, yeah, so those labels, they get auto-generated by the scaffold. They don't look very good. What else would you change here?
Same as album art URL.
Yeah, album art URL, that doesn't mean very much to our end user. What about these drop downs? Yeah, we should probably alphabetize them. This one looks alphabetized, but if you scroll to the bottom, it's not. So it's going to make it hard to find a particular artist.
Maybe start the artists so that they correspond with the selected genre.
We could do that. Yep. What about down here? How useful is this for them to supply an image for the album?
It should be browse button there.
Yeah, it should. We should allow them to upload an image. What else should we do? So there is an image here, but it just shows you the path. What should the user see instead of the name of that file? Yeah, let's show the actual image. And then if they want to change it, they can browse and they can replace it. So we're going to make, so this is our edit view, and our create view is going to be pretty similar. So we'll want to apply the same changes to both the create and edit views. Again, our user can't just type the name of an image and they've got no way to upload it. We need to give the end user a way to upload an image file. So we want to make all of these changes today. So some of these things are going to change in the views. Some of them we actually change in the controller, and a few of the changes we'll make in the model. So we'll start in the view because those changes are probably the easiest. Then we'll go to the controller and then we'll make changes in our model.
In work environment, how should we space it out? Model first and then control and view, or it doesn't really matter?
I don't think there's necessarily a right or a wrong. I would suggest making changes to the view is probably the simplest thing. So I'd probably start there, make as many changes as I could there. Some of the changes will happen in the logic. So for example, the sorting of the data, that's going to happen in the controller, because the queries that that get those lists, those are in the controller. So we'll want to modify those to run the query, but to add some kind of ordering to those queries. And then these things like the labels that get auto-generated, those things we actually control through the model rather than through the view. We can manipulate them from the view, but that means we have to change them on both edit and the create views. If we change those labels in the model, it will automatically update the edit and the create view at the same time, so it's more efficient to do some of those in the model. So basically, by the time we're done today, our site will kind of match this one in terms of what those images will look like. So it would be something like this. Where did that go? All right. Right. So we want a browse button instead, and if we upload an image, we want that image to be displayed, is the idea. Right, so here was our Store. So last week we created this. So we created our store manager controller, and we use scaffolding to generate all of these pages. So this is just what scaffolding gives us with no changes. Now, we didn't put a link in our header. The only way we could get here is by actually typing that address. So the first thing we actually should probably do is we should put a store manager link in here, and it'll take us to this page, and then we can start changing this page.
Are we supposed to do it so you can see it only if you're logged in? Later?
We'll deal with that later. After in our first class after reading week, we'll deal with authentication, and that'll be one of the things we do. Yeah, is we'll make that link invisible unless you're logged in. Not only unless you're administrative role, because a customer will have a login as well, but this page will only be for administrators. So we'll get there, Alex, not today. So let's first open up our layout file. I think everybody by now knows where that is. Inside of views and shared, we've got layout. So in our navigation bar, after our store link, let's add one more link to our store manager index page. Our link will say store manager. And it will call the index method in our store manager controller. So now we have a link in the nav bar that will take us to that list. If you don't have the code, you should be taking a copy of my GitHub repository and working with that. Because all the latest code is on GitHub. So if we refresh, we should have a store manager link here now. That'll take us here. So let's make some of the changes we talked about here. First thing maybe we'll do is let's actually switch. Let's switch the genre and title columns, and then we're going to resort this list. So when it loads, instead of loading based on by album ID, the default sort will be first the artist name and then the title. So this will be A to Z, and then within one particular artist, all the albums will also be sorted A to Z. So let's open up our store manager index view. And I'm going to switch around the genre and title columns. I'll put title in both the header row and inside my loop. I'm going to put title first. So we've got artist, title, and then genre last. So now these two columns should be switched. So first artist, now title, now genre. But our list is still not sorted in any kind of useful way. So to fix this, we're going to need to change the query that runs in our controller. So inside of my store manager controller, right up near the top, here's our query that gets all the albums and the related artists and genres. So without any specified sort order, it just sorts it by the primary key column. So when we're returning our list of albums, order by clause here. So in my index method, so if we order by artist.name, it should now sort alphabetically on all the albums. So I've added this clause in blue to the code that the scaffolding generated. Otherwise, albums to list just default sorts to album ID. So if we make that change and build, we should be able to go try that page again. And the album should sort by the artist name. So build your solution, go back to your browser and try it again. So we should see some change in how this gets displayed. So now our list starts with AA, goes all the way down to Z. So that first sorting is working, but now we want to add a second column, because where the artist is the same, we also want these sorted by A to Z now. In fact, they're not. So it sorts first by artist, and then it falls back to album ID. So we're going to add something else in here. We can only use order by once, but we also have a then by function. So first by the artist name, and second by the album title. So we can have as many then by functions as we want to. We want to order by 5 different columns. The first one is always order by, and the others are then by, then by. So if we build again and refresh, then our data should be sorted first by all the artists and then by all the album titles. So now, even within one artist, all the albums are sorted alphabetically by title. So anywhere we scroll through that list, where we have multiple albums by an artist, those albums are sorted alphabetically too. So we're going to need to do a similar thing later on our edit and create methods, because we have similar queries that fill the drop-down lists on those forms. And those queries are not in order. They're ordered by ID rather than being ordered alphabetically. So we're going to write order by clauses on those. We'll do that a little bit later. We're just going to keep working on the index view for now. So once we have this sorted properly, the next thing we want to do is give the user the ability to resort. If they're looking for something specific, make it easier for them to sort this list up or down on any column. Now, we don't need to write the code ourselves for that. We can just use a simple JavaScript library. So if you go into your week 6 folder on Blackboard, the third item here says sortable.js. So for those of you who are in my PHP class, we've already used this library once. So just right click, open that up in a new tab. So this is a free JavaScript library that takes a regular HTML table that looks like this, and it changes it so that it works like this, that we can click any column and the script will generate a little up or down arrow for us and it will sort in the correct direction. So we're just going to add this library to our project and we'll add it to our layout file so we can then use it on any view. It's not specific to this one page. We could add it in easily to any of our views. So when you scroll about halfway down the page underneath this, so there's 2 tables here. There's the first one without the library. Here's the second one where the sorting works. And then the instructions are just below that table where you see some red text. So it says how to use it. 3 steps. First, download the library. So right click and choose Save Link As. So browse into your music store project. Now there's already a folder set up where that has a whole bunch of client-side JavaScripts. That's what this is a client-side JavaScript library. Which folder should we put this in? Yeah, in scripts. So that's where we have things like jQuery, Bootstrap, etc. So let's save it here. Now notice the script file name, it has 2 T's, and that's kind of important. So we'll save it. So if I go and look at my project in my File Explorer, so here's my sort table or sortable.js. But when I go back to Visual Studio, if you open the scripts folder, it doesn't actually show up here. So just because we've saved a file to the file system doesn't mean it's automatically included in our Visual Studio project. So there's a way we manually have to add it. If I click on my scripts folder here, and there's this little button on the toolbar that has 3 files kind of overlapping. It's third from the right. It says Show All Files. When I click on that, we can now see the sortable.js at the bottom. But you notice the icon is gray. That means Visual Studio sees the file on our file system, but it's not part of the project yet. To fix this, we can just, so notice all these have little red and blue icons. This one's just kind of grayed out. If I right-click the file, I can then choose Include in Project. So that adds the file to the project, and now we can use it. It gets included when we upload everything. So again, if you missed that, when you can't see it, click the Show All Files button here on the toolbar. Then right-click once you can see sortable.js and choose Include in Project. I think I'm going to have to restart Visual Studio. So I may have to do that process again. I don't know that it kept that file for me. We'll see. Yeah, it's not there, so I'll repeat the process. I'll show all files. In the project. So to make this globally available, we want to add a link to it in our layout file down at the bottom. So our layout file should already be open because we added a link up in our header. So if we scroll down to the bottom, you can choose now we should be able to use that script on any page anywhere in the project. So we've done 2 of the 3 steps we need. Download the file, add it to the project, and add a link to it in our layout. So those were steps 1 and 2 here. The last thing is says to make any table sortable, give it a class of sortable. And notice there's only 1 T. So the script name had 2 T's and the class in it we have to use has 1. I don't know why that is. So in our index, if we scroll up to the top of our table, we already have a bunch of classes here for CSS. We'll add the class sortable. It's not a CSS class, it's a class that we're using for JavaScript. So just add the word sortable with 1 T into our table tag. And now if we refresh our page, we now should be able to click on any column heading and our table is going to sort automatically. I just have to restart my server because I had to close Visual Studio. So now when I click on any column heading, my table sorts. But that was pretty easy. I'm also just going to grab that URL from the sortable. I'm going to copy it. And I'll maybe just comment in here. But where I got that code, I didn't write it. I'll give credit to the developer. So our page is better now. It's not quite finished, but now we can sort. And when the page first loads, the order of the albums makes a lot more sense. So we still want to format the price. We're going to do that later. We also want to add the ability to search and filter this list. So we want to add, like here on this version, we want to add a little search form. We want to add a little search form here, a text box and a search button that will work something like this. If I wanted to say search for all the live albums, Right? It will bring up a list of all the albums that match, that have that word anywhere in the title. And also we might want to do this. Put in a number displaying how many records we're looking at. So we can also figure that out as well. We'll deal with the price a little bit later. So at the top here, for some reason, the scaffolding, really bad HTML, I'm sure this would drive Scott crazy. They've put this little create link inside of a paragraph tag, which is silly. So let's maybe change that to a section. We'll anchor this. We'll kind of divide this up. We use the Bootstrap grid system. So the create is in a little 3-column section on the left. And then we'll create another section over on the right that has our search form. And we'll anchor it off to the right. So in here, we want a text box and we want a submit button in a form. So we're not going to do a regular HTML form tag. If we look at how the forms are done, so here's our create. The form's generated on the server using the HTML library with a begin form method. And it includes this anti-forgery token. So that helps prevent cross-site scripting attacks. It means any form post to this form has to come from the same domain. If it comes from another domain, it gets blocked. So we're going to use this same syntax. Oops, in round brackets. So we want to generate an HTML form tag. And we'll call the anti-forgery token method. We'll just save this for a minute and look at what this does in our browser. Browser right now, we won't actually see anything, but we will if we view the source of the page. So we can see what these two tags are going to do. Whoop. Oops, sorry, hang on. I needed the @ symbol in front of it. That's what I'm missing. So our page looks the same pretty much. It moved over our link spot. But when we view the source, you'll notice we have a form now. It posts to the same URL. The method is post, and it's generated a hidden input called request verification token. So when we submit the form, the server is going to check for that value. If that value isn't there, it's going to assume somebody else is trying to send data to our form from some other application, which we want to block. So that's what this little method here is doing. So now we'll just add on a regular HTML input box. We'll make this required so the user can't click the search button if they don't type anything in the search box. A regular HTML input box and button. So that's really all we need to do in terms of building our form. So our next step is going to be to write the code in our controller that will process this form. Right now, our index view, it only has a get method. The page loads when the user clicks the link. So we still want to be able to load our index method again, but this time with a post. When the user fills out that form and asks us to search for something. So now we need, Alex?
Should we put type submit with the button?
Yeah, the default, that's the default. So you can, but you don't need to. We'll work without it. So now we need to go to our controller. I can fill it out right now, but nothing's going to happen. It's just basically going to reload the same page and ignore any search criteria. So now we've got this. I can search for something. But it just runs again. So in here, we've got an index method for get. We now need an index method when there's a post. So under here, and there's a post at the index. We want to search by the title. Now, if you notice, if I scroll down, we already have a couple of post methods in here. So here's the first one. This is when they submit the create form. It says public action result create. And notice it's got these two little declarations above in square brackets that should appear in kind of light blue. The first one is HTTP post. So if we don't specify the method as post, it uses get. But when we want to process an HTTP post, we have to explicitly say this method is for handling a post at this path. And then we tell it to validate that anti-forgery token to prevent cross-site scripting. So we want to use both of these declarations on our post method. This method is going to be for handling HTTP post. And we want to validate the anti-forgery token. So this method is also called index because it's on the index view. We're not building a separate view. It's the same index view we've already got. The signature of this index method is different. When the user clicks the store manager link, there's no parameters coming to index. They're not giving us any information. But when they do a post, we're going to have a value called title. Whoops. This should match. I guess I should put this in capitals. So we want to show all the albums that contain that keyword anywhere in the album title. Yeah, only albums. So we're not looking for an exact match. We're looking where the keyword appears anywhere in the title. And this little link query syntax we're using, it has a contains method. And again, we'll order by artist name. So we're not getting all the albums. We're only getting the ones where the title contains the keywords. But we're going to keep our same sort order. First sort by artist name and then by album title. We're going to fetch our query result. We're going to send that query result back. So we don't need a separate page for our search. We're going to keep the user on the same page, but we're going to filter the data that they've asked for. So we should be able to try this. I'm going to see if it's correct. If I search for the keyword live, we shouldn't get all the albums anymore. So now we only get the ones that contain the word live somewhere. So we can try a few different keywords that we see and make sure our search is working. It's a similar query, just with a where clause. Alex?
If it's screaming at me that there is already an open data reader associated with this command and must be closed first, what do they mess up?
Compile or when you try to run
Try
it?
to search it. We also have this one's problem.
So it works when you don't search, it works.
First, no.
What's the error? There's already
An open data reader associated with this command, which must be closed first.
Well, here's one possible suggestion. In your database connection string, add this property. Multiple active result sets equals true. So if we open that. See, I have that by default in mine. Right here, just add semicolon, multiple active result sets equals true in your connection string.
Okay.
Try that. Should solve the problem.
Okay, thank you.
So we're getting there. The last thing we want to do, well, we'll come back to the price in a bit. We also want to just display the number of albums here. So we could use the view bag for that. We'll do that. It won't take us long, and then we'll take a break. So we should show the number of albums when we click the link or when we do a search. We want to know how many records we're seeing. So first we'll go to our search. So in the method we just wrote, we'll set a property called album count. And our list has a built-in count method that tells us how many items are in the list. We want this same line of code we just added up here in the get method as well. So I'm going to repeat it up above. The one at the top is when the user clicks the Store Manager link in the nav bar, and it lists all the albums. And the second version is when they search. In each case, we want to know how big is our list so we can display that value in the view. So we'll just need to compile to build that change, and then we can display this value in our view up at the top. So on line 8, there's a heading, an H2 tag that says albums. Here we can just add viewbag dot if we add viewbag.album count and a space in front of it, now our page should always show us how many albums we're displaying, whether it's the whole list or whether it's a subset of the list because we've searched by title. So we're going to add this here to our heading. Make sure you build, because we made a change to the controller logic again. And try our Store Manager link one more time. So when we click the link, when we get everything, it's 246. If we search, that number should get updated. So 16 albums that have the word live or live. Ryan?
How would you display what keywords were searched?
Probably with the view bag as well. You could put a separate property, like a search term in the view bag, and then you could display it here. That's probably the easiest way. So if we wanted to do that, maybe something like this, where it comes in, we're going to put that in. So then we could use the viewbag.search term. If we have one, we could display it. So here, maybe before I close my H2, we could put in a little if statement. It says something like if so what would we want to display here? So we could maybe display a dash and then the term if there is one. We'll see if that works. We may have to modify it. I'm just going to try it out. I'll put the code back up. Whoop. Oh, whoops. Need an add symbol there, I think. Have to think about that one for a minute. We could try it this way.
If you remove dash,
Yeah, it's not quite right because it's going to put it right next to it.
if you remove dash, it doesn't show any error, but it doesn't work.
Yeah, it's not showing anything here. Have to think about that one. Not quite right. All right, I'll mull that one over the break. Okay, we'll take a 10-minute break here.